Oscar, when our grandchildren in, I don't know, 2070 read about the COVID-19 2020 pandemic, what do you think they'll learn?
Our grandchildren? I'm not even close to having grandchildren. First, you need to have your own children, and then they need to have children.
I know, just hypothetically. Oscar, what do you think will make it into the history books?
Oh, okay, like what are some of the most memorable moments of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
Okay, does it just have to be negative things, or can it be positive too?
Both.
Okay, I have some ideas, do you?
I do, but you can start.
One of the most grim milestones of the pandemic was the U.S. passing 500,000 COVID-related deaths in February 2021. That is a lot of lives lost. To help you understand the gravity of that number, 500,000, 500,000. Here are some facts to put into perspective. More Americans have died in 1 year in this pandemic than in all of World War II. Here's something else to consider. Did you know there are 525,600 minutes in a year? That's about 1 COVID death per minute for an entire year. To help understand the significance of 500,000 deaths, President Biden led a vigil with 500 candles to honor those that have passed, meaning each of those candles represent 1,000 people. Let's now take a moment of silence to honor and remember those that have passed.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Oscar, for leading us in that moment of silence. That milestone of 500,000 deaths will unfortunately make future textbooks for sure.
I agree. Okay, Trenton, what else about the pandemic will make the history books?
Something that won't only make the history books, but also economic books is the global recession, unemployment rates, and extreme effects on small business owners. The first sign was the stock market crash, which began in late February 2020 and lasted until early April. This market crash was short-lived but mostly recovered by fall 2020. The real economic crisis stemmed from the fact that COVID-19 caused the world's population to be on lockdown to stop the spread. Lockdown means staying at home. Staying at home means not going out and spending money. Not going out and spending money means the economy does not get stimulated. This negatively affected so many businesses and industries, especially food, retail, and travel and transportation. But small businesses were hurt the most, and we saw so many community gyms close due to the pandemic. Along with businesses hurting, unemployment rates soared. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate in April 2020 increased by 10.3% to 14.7%. This is the highest monthly increase in the history of unemployment data. The unemployment rate had gone down from 14.7% in April 2020 to 6.3% in January 2021. But this is still much higher than before the pandemic.
That's a lot of lost jobs. I still know people out of work.
Same. All right, Oscar, I know there was a lot of hurt and negative memories from this time, but what is something positive that history will remember about the COVID-19 pandemic?
I got you. One of the biggest feats of 2020 was the rapid development of the COVID-19 vaccine. On March 30th, 2020, about a month after things really started to go south, the U.S. began Operation Warp Speed to develop a vaccine. By mid-December, 8.5 months after the project started, the first vaccine was given in the U.S. That is warp speed. Vaccines usually take years to develop, not months. In fact, the average time to develop a vaccine is between 10 to 15 years. So 8.5 months is very impressive. People have been less impressed with the rollout of actually getting the vaccine into people's arms, but President Biden's goal is to have everyone get a vaccine that wants one by summer 2021.
As a science nerd, I think vaccines are the coolest. It's like they turn you into a real-life superhero fighting off the viruses.
They are cool. I know vaccines for kids are a whole other animal though, so stay tuned for that. All right, Trenton, what's one more thing that will make the history books?
Well, let's see. It's gotta be virtual learning. Now, there were certainly pros and cons to virtual learning. Some of the cons include a lack of social interaction between kids, less accountability for students without a physical teacher with them, not having an ideal learning environment, and unequal access to technology. Virtual learning has been the hardest on low-income families. When schools closed in March 2020, students from low-income families had less access to technology and less reliable internet than students from high-income families, making participation in online learning more difficult. Although virtual learning for K-12 students is not ideal, it's not all bad either. The COVID-19 pandemic revolutionized education. In March 2020, when schools had closed, e-learning stepped up and filled a need. Suddenly, students could use technology to learn from anywhere. Well, anywhere with an internet connection, but the flexibility to learn from anywhere is pretty powerful, especially in college and higher education. As schools go back to learning in person, the question is, will online learning maintain its time in the spotlight? I guess we have to check future history books to see.
Virtual learning. It was the best of times and the worst of times.
Well, in 2070, whatever our grandchildren read in their history books about the COVID-19 pandemic, I hope they see the resilience and innovation that occurred during this once-in-a-generation global crisis.